Thank you for joining us today. We're super excited to have you here to talk about what is it to enable the future of the workforce. My name is Stephen Hussain. I'm the Director of Community Workforce Programs for Prologis. And with me is Derek Belch, the CEO and founder of Strivr, one of the most innovative companies, I think, and a company that I have great admiration for. So we'll go ahead and get started today. And Derek, one of my first questions for you is just talk about the history and the founding of Strivr, because I think it's fascinating where it came from and where it's at today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Stephen. Really appreciate it. We do have an interesting history, if I do say so myself. So the genesis of this is actually in sports. I played football at Stanford University here in Palo Alto as an undergrad. And while I was an undergraduate student athlete, I took some classes on virtual reality. And I always kept in the back of my mind, this is an interesting technology that as it evolves, could be interesting to help train athletes, at least the mental side of the game, down the road. Flash forward a few years later, I'm in business school at USC, and I have this crazy thought in my head that if I don't see coaching before I turn 30, I will regret it forever. So I accelerated my MBA. I finished early. I came back up to Stanford to coach for the football team. And while I was coaching, I had to do a master's thesis because I was a graduate assistant. I didn't really need another master's degree, but it was kind of the only way to get the job. So, we made sure to do it right. And my thesis was with Jeremy Bailenson, who runs the virtual reality lab at Stanford. He's a tenured professor there. He was also the professor that taught my VR classes as an undergrad. So you can kind of see how this is all building together. Well, my thesis was to come up with a way to train football players using virtual reality. It was such a successful academic project, and we built such a cool prototype that David Shaw, Stanford's head coach, literally sat me down and was like, if I were you, I would get the heck out of here and go start a company because you're too smart to be a football coach. And that thing is really cool. And I would love to invest in it if you'll give me the opportunity. So that's literally how Strivr was born. I did some soul searching, talked to my wife, talked to my parents, decided, hey, if not now, then when would I ever, start a company? And for the first almost 2 years, 18 to 24 months, we were mainly focused on using VR to help train athletes, to give mainly quarterbacks, but some other positions as well, and then other sports outside of football, give the athlete mental reps when their body is off the field, but their brain thinks it's on the field by putting a headset on. And then about 18 months in, we got a pretty fortuitous phone call from Walmart, and they said, hey, we've seen what you guys have done in sports. Could you come down here and show us what we might be able to do for employee training? And that sent Strivr on a much different path. We still do sports today, but it's a very small part of the business. It's mainly an enterprise play. That's how we got connected with folks like yourself. We are considered to be the industry leader as it relates to startups, using virtual reality for employee training. So that is our genesis.
Incredible, right? So as you think about, the journey over the past couple of years, and really just the last 6 months, it's just been a wild journey over the last 6 months. What are you seeing from your customers as they think about training and development and enabling that workforce?
Yeah, I think for us, not a lot has changed as it relates to the initial thesis of the company and using virtual reality, this new medium for learning, training, engagement, et cetera. And that is the analogy I love to use is a pilot in a flight simulator, right? When pilots go in a flight simulator, they basically fly the plane without actually flying the plane. If you mess up, you're not going to kill anybody. You're not going to flush $100 million asset down the drain, and you keep doing it again and again and again until you've proven that you can fly that plane without any mistake, right? The whole 10,000 hour rule, colloquially. And really, that hasn't changed as we've gotten deeper and deeper into the enterprise. A lot of our customers are seeing, even the work we did in sports and still do in sports, and then seeing what other customers are doing and saying, yeah, I want that flight simulator-like experience for my employees. And now, as you look, you alluded to, Stephen, the last 6 months, now as we look at where this world is with, remote work and video conferencing and the need to engage and immerse, at scale, and when we're not all in the same physical place. And then we look at, some of your customers in the Prologis family and the need to hire quickly and onboard quickly and not make mistakes, especially in the logistics world where they are just swamped with work right now. The need and the desire for a better training modality and one that fits into the modern day and the future workforce, it's real and it's palpable. So that's what we're seeing. I'd love to kind of hear what you guys are seeing as well, because I think there's probably a lot of synergy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about our customers where there's a lot of overlap, but the industry is just growing incredibly fast, and it's changing very fast as well. And so we're thinking about, what are the new skills that workers need to have, and what does the future of automation look like, and robotics look like, and how do you actually upskill, hundreds of thousands and millions of workers in a way that's meaningful and effective. And that's why we're so excited about VR and other online learning platforms. We started our community workforce initiative just about 2 years ago to say, how can we upskill 25,000 folks by the end of 2025? And working with our customers and learning solutions like Strivr and others, we're thinking about what's the best way to train people and really go from tools that were once thought of as, I think, kind of niche to what are really enterprise learning solutions. And that, I think, is what the future looks like, very much so.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that's interesting that comes to mind for me as you say that, and I'm sure we'll touch on this a little later, there's also a couple other factors at play in macroeconomic trends as we look at, the aging out of certain folks in the workforce, and then, the groundswell of the younger employee or just a new generation of workers. So that knowledge transfer is critical, and the younger generations don't necessarily learn the same way that the older generations learn, nor do they want to. These, to your point, like these tools and toys and future technologies, that they are in the palm of the hands of every person in the younger generation. So if you're not speaking their language as an organization with tools like virtual reality, augmented reality, video conferencing, et cetera, you're behind. And that's definitely something that we're also seeing from a macroeconomic standpoint as we look at not only the upskilling and the reskilling, but also the knowledge transfer of one generation to another. Because, for all this talk about automation, and it's real, there's a lot of human jobs that aren't going away anytime soon, if ever. So that knowledge transfer is really, really important. And we see that come up a lot, time and again.
Yeah. To that point, again, I think VR and AR and some of these other immersive learning solutions are still not really well understood and what they can do. So can you talk a little bit about, how has it really become enterprise and it's not so niche anymore, and what has that taken, and what do you think the future of that looks like?
Sure. So you are exactly right. They are not well understood. I mean, here we are, almost 6 years into Striver's journey, and almost 4 years into the enterprise journey, at least with kind of Walmart kicking everything off. And these are still two terms, virtual reality and augmented reality, that are not understood at all, and they're often confused. So let's take 30 seconds for the viewers and just make sure we explain this. So virtual reality is what we like to call complete mental transportation, right? So body in one place, brain somewhere else. I put a headset on, I look around, I am literally, my brain feels as if I'm somewhere else. Literally, I'm in one physical location. Augmented reality, on the other hand, is exactly what it sounds like, augmenting the real world around you. So that may be a pair of glasses like you're wearing, that may be a hard hat, that may be a heads-up display for a pilot, maybe eventually it's like your contact lens or your eyeballs, like Minority Report. We could probably spend all day on that topic. That's a little scary. But AR is like a digital enhancement and an augmentation of the real world around us. Well, VR, of course, it's got a long way to go. It's only going to get better. But VR is here. It's here to stay. It is ready for prime time, for the most part. Augmented reality, on the other hand, still somewhat primitive. A lot of problems and challenges to work through. Probably 5 to 10 years out as it relates to where VR is today, right? So that's just like a quick background that candidly I do in every meeting, even with some of our customers we've been working with for 2 years. I remind everybody, what the difference is between these two technologies. So for the purpose of virtual reality, what we are doing with most of our customers, the major benefits, again, back to that pilot in a flight simulator analogy. So, not only a more interesting, fun, engaging, memorable learning experience, but then when we think about how that flight simulator works, right, and how we can give that experience to other employees on a number of different learning, opportunities. Now we're looking at shorter time to proficiency, better retention and therefore improve real world performance. Eventually, some of the financial ROI that comes with lowering seat time and again, better operational output, like super important for the Prologis customer family when we talk about loading a truck more effectively, where every square foot matters in that truck, right? So, from a performance perspective on the back end, VR has proved very, very beneficial as it relates to lowering or shortening ramp times and increasing, output in the real world.
So when you think, I've had a couple conversations about the logistics sector, and it's just such an interesting sector. It's very broad, very complex. It's not homogeneous at all, and it's very exciting, right? So how do you think about VR and immersive learning in that context, and where do you think the industry should think about in terms of really upskilling the future of their talent force?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost it goes back to what I just said, which is how do we make training not only more cost efficient, from a time perspective, but a button seat perspective, let's get you on the floor and get you proficient quicker. But also, all right, can this technology lead to better learning outcomes and therefore better real world outcomes? I mean, some of our customers that have fleets of thousands of trucks, tens of thousands of trucks, hundreds of warehouses, right? Just lots of complex operations. Again, literally, like a square foot in a truck is $1 million in profit when you kind of extrapolate it out over the course of the fleet, right? So first and foremost, I think logistics can think about this from okay, if my people are better in the real world as a result of this training, then we will benefit on the back end, right? The other angle here, and I would love your thoughts on this as well, is really these are high churn industries. And when you talk about a technology that not only can make learning more fun, not only can potentially engage the workforce, in a more effective manner, not only can lead to better real world performance, which makes people feel better about their jobs so they're not leaving, right? We see this downstream effect of potentially churn also decreasing. And again, a shorter ramp time for high churn roles that in some cases it's inevitable that you're going to churn 30, 40, 50, 80% at some point during the year. One small example, one of our customers, when we onboarded them, a year ago, we had a gentleman who was on the older side take off the headset after training and say out loud to the room, "I can't wait to tell my grandkids what I did at work today." Those are, while very fuzzy, right? Those are some of the outcomes we are seeing as it relates to the impact this can have in very high churn roles. That employee probably just bought another week, month, maybe year as far as his tenure with the company, and that's super important. But would love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, as we've thought about that, from the very beginning, as we thought about the community workforce initiative and how do we really help our customers from a talent and labor perspective, right? The industry has a high turnover rate. And what are the things you can do that? The evidence is clear that learning and development investments help with retention. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. And I think the other piece of this, though, is how does learning and development weave into career pathways and upskilling workers to advance beyond their current role to other future roles, and reskilling them for new opportunities as well. And that's, I think, what's really key for the sector's long-term growth and sustainability is how can you do that effectively? And you have to be able to do it at scale. But it also goes back to what you were talking about earlier, which is what are the measures in place that you have, right? L&D is not just an expense. Training isn't just an expense. There can yield real operational improvements, and you really should think about that on the front end in terms of measurement. So I'd love to hear how you think about that with your customers and how, like on the very front end, you start to think about what measures they should be putting into place.
Yeah, sure. I was actually literally going to ask you the same thing. So I'll answer and we'll shift to you because we do get, we get pushed pretty hard on ROI. And oftentimes we have to just very respectfully, but honestly ask our customers back, well, with all due respect, can you tell us the ROI on your current training? And sometimes it's a hard answer for them. So I would love to know what you guys are hearing. But first on our side, we use the Kirkpatrick model in many cases, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 learning. A lot of our customers are first and foremost concerned with just basic sentiment analysis, right? And then we start to go a little deeper, engagement, retention, et cetera, and ultimately culminating hopefully in some sort of ROI, that they're seeing on the back end. But to your point of your question, we really, really emphasize to our customers, hey, if you guys just want to do something fun, like to test VR, we are not the right partner for you because we're pretty rigorous upfront. We are thinking about ROI from day one. We're thinking about scale, not only doing this for 100 people, but hopefully 1,000, 100,000, Walmart, 1 million. So we do approach that, or we approach things in that manner from the beginning. And we do set up our learning modules with all of those things in mind. And as I alluded to before, one of the biggest ROI drivers that we've seen from a measurements perspective has been seat time. And Walmart, as an example, I know they're not a pure logistics company, but they're starting to do a lot of that. They obviously have a massive scale. But they have been very open about publicly about time to proficiency coming way down. I mean, some of these trainings they've eliminated half day, full day trainings in favor of 20 to 30 minutes in a headset because they've seen that the output is the same from a learning perspective or very close, right? And so when you start to go through and you look at, okay, 30 minutes here, an hour there, 5 hours here, these people not flying here, right? Like the cost of hotel, all this stuff, it just adds up. And some of these companies that we're working with, you look at their size and scale, very similar to the Prologis family. I mean, these savings are in the tens of millions, if not more, when you start to change manage your way across the organization. So that's what we're seeing. But would also love to know. I mean, Prologis on your side, you guys have really leaned into HR and people development a lot more in the last few years. So would love to know how some of your customers approach measuring ROI as well.
Yeah, I think there's the pure measures that you can think about of, how much are you spending on L&D and how can you save seat time as well. But I certainly think the most sophisticated organizations are the ones who are really investing to say, do we see yields and productivity increases? Do we see declines in safety expenses or safety claims? How effective are we at packaging and shipping? Those are the things that if you can actually really integrate and do well from a measurement standpoint with your training, then the type of ROI you can generate is really, really incredible. And those are things that you really want to have on the front end, but they can be hard to measure. So as we talk to our customers and as we're engaging with them on training and development, we certainly are asking, hey, what are the measures that really matter to you? What are the measures that your operational teams really care about? Because if we're not thinking about that, then we're going to have a problem to see investments in training and development. And I think that has really been key to our success and the success of our customers who are doing this really, really well. But I also think and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, it's just an incredibly tight labor market still. Despite a pandemic and unemployment, the labor market is actually still very tight for the logistics sector. And employers are thinking about how do they develop their own training programs because you may not be able to find the person who has the skills that you need. And how do you invest and do that really, really well? So what have you seen from your customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really, really, really good question. We are seeing what you're saying firsthand as well. On the one hand, you have these massive unemployment figures, and therefore around the country and in the world for that matter, and therefore a lot of the customers that we were talking to about working together in the hotel, restaurant, et cetera world, hospitality, that's a little further out. They're kind of taking a pause right now, and just until further notice. But on the logistics side, things could not be any busier. We are seeing double-digit or more hiring growth with many of our customers. One of the really interesting things we're seeing actually is now our customers have to think about kind of reinventing how they onboard employees, especially managers, into the organization. So onboarding hasn't changed a ton for like your frontline worker that is an essential employee and has to be in that physical warehouse from the first minute through their time with the company. But onboarding for managers actually has changed significantly. A lot of our customers are telling us, hey guys, like we actually can't bring managers into the warehouse because we have to lower the number of people in the warehouse from a safety perspective. We can't bring them in like we used to. So we're actually now we want to pivot VR with you a little bit to, okay, we used to do this with like the frontline employee that was onboarding. Now we actually want to think about how do we bring the warehouse to the manager that is training in their living room right now, and how do we use virtual reality again? Back to the basic explanation of how this stuff works. Body in one place, brain somewhere else. How do I make a manager of a warehouse feel like they are there? So when they actually step onto the warehouse floor a month into their onboarding, they are not getting up to speed. They've done this before, so to speak, right? So that's been a major theme that we're seeing, just this reinvention of the onboarding process amidst what is a very busy hiring time. And you know what? We haven't even seen the worst of this yet, in a good way, because once we hit the holiday season and the peak, the peak hiring starts happening, it's going to be, 5 and 10-fold what it was in the past. And these organizations are going to be stretched to the max for sure.
Derek, how are you thinking about, just really how does training enable success of a frontline worker? And I ask this question because as we're thinking about is career pathways is so important to a frontline worker, enabling them to really advance themselves economically, as well as to support talent development within the companies they work for. But how do you think about that? And how does Strivr think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, and these are out of the words of our customers' mouths and not necessarily mine. So I'm merely the messenger, but I think it's the reality. As we look at the frontline worker in a number of industries, maybe not like the hospital industry where there's a lot of education that goes into being a nurse or a doctor, et cetera. But certainly in hospitality and logistics and a lot of different in restaurants, in retail. It often frontline workers, it's a very different education level than some of your white collar workforce, right? Or the knowledge worker, I should say. And so first and foremost, our customers are very excited about virtual reality, immersive learning as a learning by doing visual medium, right? For visual learners who in some cases don't have high school degrees. I mean, let's just be very frank about it, right? Or they are learning very task specific, operationally specific, endeavors where that learn by doing opportunity that virtual reality affords is critical. So that first and foremost, that is something that has been very exciting for a lot of our customers, and candidly, the NPS scores that come back from the ground up from a lot of these folks. Like I mentioned that story before. I can't wait to tell my grandkids what I did at work today. I mean, we're just seeing that where a lot of frontline workers love this technology, and they say, "Give me more. I want more of it." And then as we start to go downstream from that, like we talked about before, hopefully better real world performance once they actually get onto the job. Hopefully lower churn rate. Hopefully keeping your job for longer, moving your way up the ladder for longer. We are seeing all of this firsthand right now, which is super exciting, and it's definitely a technology that we see being part of that frontline toolkit going forward.
Yeah, as we talk to our customers, the thing that we hear the most are soft skills, right? So, and then when you dive in deeper, it becomes basic English, basic math, basic literacy skills. Those foundational skills are very important. Digital skills is a huge barrier right now as we think about frontline workers and how do you really train them for, advanced technology that may be entering in warehouses or logistics centers. So there's so much to be done there. And I think, VR has a really unique capability to teach soft skills in particular. That I think, for the longest time, employers have been trying to figure out how do you teach soft skills effectively. And you look at VR and it's just, there's so much potential there going forward. So it's really an exciting time in learning.
Yeah, this is actually one of the ones I wanted to make sure I asked you before we close. There's all this talk of automation, right? And yes, automation is real. It's coming. It has come. It's going to come more. But at the end of the day, like there are still a lot of people-driven jobs out there, people-centric jobs. And then I think you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, we could spend all day talking about soft skills and how VR can help with that in addition to the operational skills. But would love to hear your perspective on what is the realistic time frame, if at all, for when automation just completely engulfs the logistics world and those human jobs aren't needed? I'm personally skeptical based on what I've seen with my own two eyes, but would love your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, I'm quite skeptical. I think it's somewhat overblown that you're going to see a tremendous job elimination. In fact, I think if you look at it today, that the centers that are most heavily automated actually still require the greatest degree of talent and labor. So you don't see those trends, and I think it's really hard. I think people overestimate how easy it is to automate. It's incredibly expensive, and sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And there are certain things that you just can't automate effectively. And so I'm not confident. What I definitely see happening over the next 5 years is increased automation happening and frontline workers interacting with technology in a way that they haven't done before. And that will really require a lot of investment into reskilling to get them comfortable. But I also think it's a real opportunity to improve job quality. There's things that automation and technology can really do to make these jobs better and make the companies and organizations more effective at the same time. And I think that's where you're going to see the investments, though, in L&D is how do you really blend those two worlds, because one's not going to eliminate the other.
Yeah, and just to directly answer your question as we're wrapping up on some of the soft skills, right? I mean, as the world gets more and more automated, robots aren't going to manage people. At least I hope not, right? So one of the things we have seen at Strivr with a lot of our customers that we're on multi-year journeys with is actually exactly the question that you asked a couple minutes ago, which is, okay, we start with hard skills, operational skills, real ROI driven stuff. And then we start to work our way more towards soft skills and management skills and giving feedback and, all of the things, again, pilot in a flight simulator where, role plays just don't quite do it justice. Passively watching a video on how to manage someone is almost a waste of time. So how do you actually put someone in the shoes they'll be in a real life simulated conversation? I'm a manager. I'm evaluating what this warehouse looks like. What would I do in this situation? So we are actually seeing a lot of soft skills work come up because companies know that if they don't invest in management and in the people side of their businesses, eventually they're going to be behind.
Well, I wanted to close today. This is the midst of planning season for most as they're thinking about 2021, and there's still a lot of change happening. But now I really want to say, what's your advice to folks as they're thinking about how they can address the workforce of the future starting next year? What are the things that they can be doing right now to improve? What would you say to them?
Yeah, so overall, I'm actually going to channel what one of our Walmart champions always says when we're on the speaking circuit together. Just do it. just do something. And candidly, it doesn't have to be immersive learning. Doesn't have to be VR, AR, all MR, all the things out there that are paying the bills for my family. It can be anything. Just do something and jump in 2 feet first. That is different. That is innovative. That is, again, as we talked about earlier, that is speaking the language of this younger generation of employees. That is speaking more to these macroeconomic trends that we are seeing. So do something overall. And then as it relates to, our world specifically, virtual reality, immersive learning, VR, AR, where the world is going. I think the way that you kicked off this segment actually is fascinating. And that's what is on a lot of our customers or prospective customers' minds. We always thought this was like this cool future piece of technology, didn't know that it was here and real. And it is. So closing thought for the folks out there watching this as they're looking at 2021 and beyond, this is real. This works. This is not just fun snake oil, right? Like this actually works. And again, pilot in a flight simulator, we are bringing a flight simulator-like experience to blank. Insert job here from, frontline worker to CEO and everything in between. So really making sure that logistics companies, with all of the complexity that they go through on a daily basis from a training perspective and a people development perspective, and then eventually, that long tail of management, soft skills, et cetera, this really works. And the ROI is there in myriad different ways. And I would really encourage folks to make sure that this is in their plans, at a minimum to test it in 2021, at best to start to think about going big.
Derek, this was a lot of fun. It's always fun to think about these things, and hopefully it was informative for people. Anybody listening, just feel free to reach out to both of us. Both of us are pretty geeks about this, so we're always excited to help, and we're really interested in this. So thank you very much, Derek. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Stephen. Anytime. Thank you.